So I do want to welcome everyone to today's Foundation Fighting Blindness Proposers Day. My name is Chad Jackson. I am the Senior Director of the Preclinical Translational Research Program at the Foundation Fighting Blindness. And we've gathered here today to talk about the Brint Family Translational Research Program. You may have noticed a name change with our Translational Award. In the past, it was called the Translational Research Acceleration Program, in which we call TRAP for short. But we have revamped and revitalized this program, and it is now known as the Brint Family Translational Research Program. So please don't get those two confused. They are still have the same mission, but we have a new name and a couple new items to share with you today as we walk through this program. Also, if you would like to ask a question, please do so in the Q&A box. And Leila Kinney, our grants manager, is here to help assist in that. So if you have any problems or any concerns, please just put your question or concern in the Q&A box and we will be monitoring that. All right, today's agenda. We have, of course, we just got done with the welcome, and then we will talk about the translational program overview. And then we will briefly discuss some grant writing tips for all of you out there, and then have a little brief moment for the audience questions, and then the closeout. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Foundation Fighting Blindness and maybe your first time coming to us for funding, just want to be clear on what our role is as an organization. We are here to provide the funding that will drive the research to develop the treatments and cures for blinding diseases. And the two disease indications that we are primarily focused on are inherited retinal disease and dry AMD. Today's presentation and some of the items you hear about that are baked into the program and are some of the requirements or some of the interest areas for our funding in this program are really born out of this publication here entitled Inherited Retinal Degenerations and Non-Neovascular Age-Related Macular Degeneration, Progress and Unmet Needs. This publication really highlights and drives our 5-year strategic plan and also highlights the gaps in the research that need to be filled in order to adequately address inherited retinal disease and dry AMD. So you'll see, so I would challenge you and encourage you to go visit TVST, download this publication and read it, because not only does it tell you a lot about our translational program, but it tells you a lot about the vision for the Foundation Fighting Blindness over the next 5 years as we try to address some of these unmet needs in this research area. Now, here's just some of the highlights of the Brint Family Translational Research Program. As you all who are attending here probably know, the RFA is out and we are accepting letters of intent. Those letters of intent are due June 12th of this year. The funding is $1 million of funding that will be distributed over 3 years. I do want to highlight, though, that if you have a research plan that is shorter than 3 years, but will still take $1 million of funding, you are still eligible to apply. So we just don't want any projects that are going to extend past 3 years, because we do want to see therapies get to the clinic as soon as possible. Therefore, we want you to propose something with a pretty aggressive timeline of 3 years. For more information about the program and for the details of the RFA, you can visit the website that's underlined here to download that document. And also with that document, there's also a budget that you can download so you can start formulating a budget. And who are we looking for? We're looking for PIs, essentially those folks in academia who are in this research area that believe they have a preclinical effort at hand and are willing to accept $1 million in order to fuel their research towards clinical utility. The same goes for companies that are working in our space as well as nonprofits. So just a little bit about the research programs and funding allocation at the Foundation Fighting Blindness, just for those of you who may not worked with us in the past. As you go around the circle here, you'll see the different things that we allocate our money towards. If we start at the bottom left here, the My Retina Tracker Registry, this is a patient registry with well over 10,000 patient profiles in it, as well as we provide genetic testing for patients who have been diagnosed with inherited retinal disease free of charge. A lot of the resources in the Mind Retina Tracker Registry and our clinical consortium, which you see up above, are used to help fuel clinical trials for community stakeholders who want to take advantage of the emerging technologies that have come to the clinic. At the top, we do individual awards and multi-center grants. This is similar to some of the NIH mechanisms that you may be aware of, but still to fuel clinical studies and preclinical research. Next, we'll just quickly highlight the Brint family. So that's what we're talking about. About 24% of our research funds go towards this effort, in which we're here today to talk about. So I'll just leave it there. We also have career development awards, as well as the RD Fund, which is our venture philanthropy wing. And we will talk again about this a little bit later on in the presentation. Now, some things have changed. So thank you to the NIDDK website for providing such a nice graphic to highlight preclinical drug development, sort of the different steps within that. What I want to highlight is in the years past, the foundation has funded everything from screening all the way through up until basically phase 1 clinical trials with its translational funds. This year, we're changing things a little bit. We are actually narrowing that scope because there's so many preclinically staged assets at hand that we really want to start at the lead optimization phase for this particular funding call. So we will start at lead optimization, and that money or those funds will fuel everything up until phase 1 clinical trial. We are not here to fund clinical trials just because of the funding limits that we currently have for this particular program. So this will come back up in the rest of the talk as well. However, I just want to highlight this for potential candidates that are thinking about seeking funding, that you need to be at this stage in order to apply for funding. This is our vision slide for the research program. So why is the program relevant? Well, essentially, inherited retinal disease need a number of different types of therapies because while we work in the rare disease space, it is still very complex, and there's a lot of genetic diversity that comes with these inherited retinal diseases. And we're even finding out more about some of the genetic profiles when it comes to dry AMD. So we take a multi-pronged approach in addressing this area. If you look over here onto the left side of the screen, there are 3 major research priority areas in which we're funding, and also is further explained in the RFA, and those are novel medical therapies, which includes small molecules and biologics, genetic technologies, which includes AAV-based and non-viral-based delivery modalities, and gene editing. Restorative therapies, which include stem cells and optogenetics. Now, we'll go through each of these on the next few slides, but just wanted to highlight that for you here. And what is different about this program compared to other funding programs is that we wrap these research efforts in a proactive management structure. That includes monthly reports and also getting assigned and working with a industry expert in how to turn your research idea into more of a development and industry-based approach in order to actually get towards clinical trial faster. Outside of going through this process, we really hope that these projects have a better ability to engage with additional funding partners such as venture capitalists or even other research partnerships with other nonprofits or government entities. And ultimately, what we're seeking is projects that are able to file filings like an investigational new drug filing with the FDA, hopefully the establishment of a clinical trial, and ultimately a commercial product. So now we're going to take a minute, we're going to really take a deep dive into these research priority areas. I'm literally going to read from the slide. I know a lot of people hate that, but I really want to make sure we cover the things that are written here because they're really important when you're putting together your application. So the novel medical therapies' primary goal is to advance the development of therapies that enhance or retain retinal function and structure by optimizing drug efficacy, improving targeted delivery, and minimizing toxicity. The therapeutic categories include small molecules, biologic, and alternative therapies. And when I mention alternative therapies, I mean anything that sort of falls outside the main 3 research priority areas that you want to propose. You need to propose that within the novel medical therapies section. It is important to know that you must identify a novel medical, you must identify a research priority area when you're applying so that it gets assigned to the correct review committee. Please don't just pick one at random or your application may be in jeopardy of being dismissed. The areas of interest within the novel medical therapies are enhancing retinal cellular metabolism neuroprotection, overcoming challenges in therapy development for complex genetic IRDs, leveraging the gut microbiome as a therapeutic target, non-drug therapeutic approaches, non-invasive drug delivery modalities, and again, and alternative approaches. It is key to highlight the bottom paragraph here. And when I say key areas of interest must emphasize the advancement of therapeutic approaches with a clear trajectory toward clinical application. Proposals that focus solely on research without a defined plan for clinical relevance or therapeutic translation will be less competitive during the review process. I really have to hone in on that because as you read some of these areas of interest or even the research priority areas, it may lend to at least the language that, oh, I can just study one component of this and I'll be fine. That is not the case. These components need to be wrapped in a plan that advances therapeutics towards clinical utility. Our outcomes, we really want to see that people who are affected by inherited retinal disease or dry AMD, that we have more things clinically staged for them that these people can take advantage of to help mitigate or help cure their disease. So this theme goes throughout the three priority areas that you must have an eye towards the clinic in your approach and in your application. Now moving on to genetic technologies. They are here to advance the manipulation and modification of gene expression to alter biological properties of living cells and tissues with the goal of developing therapeutic solutions for IRDs and dry AMD. This funding seeks to advance viral and non-viral gene delivery systems, improve gene and RNA editing techniques, and develop scalable manufacturing processes that align with regulatory requirements for clinical translation. The areas of interest, again, are enhancing gene therapy delivery methods, optimizing retinal cell transduction, delivery of complex genetic constructs, advancing RNA editing techniques, establishing quantifiable delivery metrics, scalable and affordable manufacturing techniques, and exploring novel gene therapy platforms. Again, I'll continue to foot stomp this, that all of this has to be an effort of actually taking a product to the clinic. So next and last is restorative therapies. This category has been rebranded. It used to be regenerative medicine, but now there's restorative therapies because a few things have been added on in our strategic plan that we weren't considering for funding in the past. To advance the development, regeneration, and application of human cells, tissues, and cellular tissue-based products to restore retinal function and vision. The goal of this funding opportunity is to advance strategies that rescue or replace degenerating or dead retinal cells, optimizing visual prostheses, and developing optogenetic approaches that confer light sensitivity to neuronal cells in the absence of functional photoreceptors. The areas of interest are cell transplantation optimization, endogenous retinal regeneration and or reprogramming, biomaterials and transplant integration, optogenetic approaches for vision restoration, and new visual prostheses development and integration, stem cell therapies, and retinal organoids. Again, all in efforts to move stuff to the clinic. So, in just summarizing all of this and understanding those research priority areas, I'm just again a basic little flow chart on the things that we're looking to fund, beginning with lead optimization all the way up until clinical trials. So we're really finishing right before clinical trials. And our hope is that the programs and projects are so well established and have the correct data to garner further on investment by either the foundation or the RD fund or another entity in order to move on to clinical trials. Again, just to highlight, projects are funded for $1 million for up to 3 years. It needs to be preclinically staged at the lead optimization phase. You must focus on the priorities of the foundation, meaning inherited retinal disease and dry AMD. If you have a proposal, and the great thing for diabetic retinopathy, unfortunately, right now, the foundation is not the place you need to seek funding at. It needs to be at another organization. Research should be hypothesis driven unless you are at a stage of completely developing the target. So we understand that still may be research questions that need to be answered, but if you are completely in, let's say, an IND enabling phase, we understand that it will not be hypothesis driven at that time, and you will be fully in the development stage. And that's pretty much it. The rest of the stuff is explained in further detail in the RFA, but just to round this out, also intellectual property is important because we want people to protect their assets and have full authority to move their proposed therapies and cures on to clinical trials and on to commercialization without there being major hurdles when it comes to intellectual property. The other two things are listed here. I'll just mention briefly, like FFB cost share partnership. If there are entities out there that already have funds and you want to discuss a partnership with this level of funding, we are open to hear that. And then there's also an FFB advisory partnership. You may already be well funded and don't need funds from the FFB, but you might need scientific input from our science advisory board, and we're happy to facilitate a conversation with those individuals. But please just reach out to the foundation, namely me, and let me know, and we can start facilitating that process. Eligibility criteria. So I've mentioned some of the things already to be eligible as far as you need to be in the disease priority areas of the foundation. You must be developing you must also be using assays and models that are favorable to regulatory agencies such as the FDA and also regulatory filings such as an IND. And you must strictly adhere to the RFA application guidance. Again, that's available on our website. Now, applicants criteria. The applicants must hold a research leadership position. So this, in academia, this could be an assistant, associate, or full professor. But essentially at an academic university, it has to be where a school has dedicated lab space and support mechanisms to this individual for them to independently conduct research. Therefore, for example, a postdoc would not be eligible to apply for this because they are working through someone else's laboratory and dedicated lab space. Research institutions are allowed to apply, companies are allowed to apply, and nonprofits as well. So again, if that's confusing, please reach out to me with more questions about as far as that level of eligibility. There will be a single PI for each project that is funded, and they're responsible for the financial oversight, the reporting, and engagement with the foundation. However, they are allowed to have sub-sites work on work for them, whether that be other academic labs or contract research organizations. We are not really concerned with where the work is done as long as the place where the work is done has the adequate resources and skill sets in order to conduct the research that is proposed within the budget that is proposed as well. And also any partnerships. So if you're going to be working with a CRO or another academic lab, we would like for those relationships to be established prior to funding and prior to submission of the application. It's great that it's notional, but we want to understand that you've already had those conversations with those sub-awardees or sub-research sites, and that they fully understand the business at hand when it comes to receiving foundation funding. Trying to sort of bake the cake after the funding is already in is a time drain on the research effort, especially when all this work could have been done up front. What is the selection process? So we released the RFA, which is already out, was released in April. We're number 2, we're having our proposers day today. The letter of intent deadline is June 12th. Again, all the guidance for the letter of intent is contained within the RFA, which is on our website. Now, and then we have full submission. Well, you're then invited to we're then down select from the letter of intent, to invite applicants to submit a full application, which will be sent out by August 18th. Then the full applications are due August 16th. Then those are reviewed, and then awards are made sometime in March 2026. And then we do award notice and kickoff meeting, and then the research starts. So if you notice, our research or our application process and selection process is very lengthy. Therefore, if you are an individual or a company that is seeking funds and timing is critical for you, this funding mechanism might not be the best funding mechanism for you because of the length of our review and selection process. So please consider that as you are writing your applications. Once selected, we then start the full process of engagement with the project mentors. But then also we have what we call the Innovation Advisory Council. And this is people with industry experience in ophthalmology that can help weigh in on a project and help pivot it in times of therapy development in order to help get it to the clinic faster. Again, we don't want to just give the funding out and leave you to your devices to figure out how to get it, how to engage with the FDA or how to position the therapeutic well for regulatory compliance or even for to move into the commercial market. So every quarter, these individuals are going to be charged with reviewing a few of the research programs within the translational portfolio to give them guidance on what they should do next and help in helping move their ideas towards the clinic. Now, this is a pause here or we'll pivot here just a little bit. And this slide here is strictly for the company applicants that plan to apply. So as I mentioned before, and when we're talking about the different levels of what FFB does with its money, we do have a subsidiary organization called the Retinal Degeneration Fund, or RD Fund for short. And this is a venture capital branch of the foundation who actually can make equity investments into companies or assets that are really clinically staged within the disease indications that have been mentioned before. So in saying that, a part of the application process for companies will also include the RD fund. And all of that means that you will have to not only submit an application for the foundation, but in lockstep with that, the RD fund may choose to do a due diligence review on the company as well. And the information company is they're analyzing the capitalization of the company, revenue, profit, and margin trends, competitors in the industry, management, and ownership of the company. So it is likely that companies will have to present or provide a pitch deck and actually have a due diligence meeting with the RD fund to basically look at the overall health of the company while applying for foundation funds. And happy again at the end to answer more questions on that side of things. All right, we're nearing the end of the presentation of Proposals Day. So we've actually covered a lot in a little bit of time. Grant writing tips. These bullets here are just for those of you who may be coming, again, to the foundation as first-time applicants or may not be comfortable with writing grants. I think if you follow some of these bullet points, it will just help make things easier for you. I think the biggest thing you can do out the gate when grant writing is start with a clear, concise project plan. Right up front, tell us what you're trying to accomplish. Very first sentence. I am trying to develop a small molecule that is a neuroprotectant for this disease indication, for an inherited retinal disease, for dry AMD. And then clearly outline your research plan, the research methods, expected outcomes, and the potential impact of the project on the foundation's disease indications of interest. That's essentially what you really need to do to really highlight your project. Make sure your proposal aligns with the foundation goals again. Remember, if you are studying or researching something for diabetic retinopathy, the foundation currently isn't the place for funding for you at this time. Also, seek feedback from your mentors and your colleagues. Have somebody read it over for you, and if it doesn't flow well for them, then work on it. I've been told in the past that you should imagine a grant reviewer eating a bowl of cereal and reading your grant application at the same time. That's why it really needs to jump off the page and be clear and concise for an individual who may be reviewing, 20 or 30 grants within a given time period. Make sure you highlight your team's expertise and qualification. We really want to know that the work that you say you do, you're really going to be able to pull off. And also address potential challenges up front. We understand that in this research and development arena that there will be potential challenges. So you really need to really highlight and detail your risk and mitigation strategy when it comes to what you're trying to do. We don't expect it to be easy, but we also expect for you to acknowledge it and be able to pivot from that if a major hurdle comes along that you aren't quite able to get over at that time. Emphasize the significance of your research, and if successful, the next logical step. We understand that also in research and development that $1 million of funding will not always get everyone to a clinical trial. But we do expect for you to have a full understanding of what it's going to take for you to advance your potential therapeutic from where you're at now all the way to clinical trials. We need to understand that whole continuum and then highlight the area in which that $1 million will address, and then also champion the next logical step that you think needs to be taken in order to get it to the clinic. Again, use clear and concise language, and make sure you proofread and edit your application. I know a lot of people are tempted to, and especially for those of you who are grant writing all the time, and that you're just going to take a grant from the NIH or another funding institution, and you're just going to give it to us with just some minor changes. Please make sure that if you decide to do something like that, you are still formatting it in a way that aligns with the guidance that's laid out in the RFA. This will highly increase your chances of funding instead of just giving the same grant that you have sent somewhere else and it's not formatted for our particular needs. So please, 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 I implore you to make sure that you take the time to edit and adhere to the guidance that's in the RFA. All right, with that said, again, we are keeping our eye on the goals here. We really want these projects, when they are finished, to be on their way towards an investigational new drug filing with the FDA or the similar filings with the EMA or anywhere where our community needs these therapies. We hope that we can establish them with clinical trial and then in the future a commercial product. Here, I will just end with my contact information. Any of you, I am here to field all questions during all stages of the application process. The main thing we want are competitive grants that are submitted to the Foundation Fighting Blindness. So please do not hesitate or shy away from asking questions. We are here to advance the research, not to worry and have any confusion about guidance or grant formatting or things like that. We want you to put the best grant in that you possibly can for our community. So I will stop there, and I see that we have some questions over here that we'll jump into. The first question is it possible to scan the patient registry for individuals with specific mutations and solicit them for clinical trials? I would say that the answer is, I guess, overall, yes. What I would need to do is put you in contact with the clinical side of our team, who is led by Todd Durham, and they can let you know the process for being able to get access to our patient registry. So please use my email address there, and I will be happy to introduce you to that side of the team. The next question is a letter of support sufficient for showing that a CRO is aware and has agreed to work with an applicant? What other evidence would be needed or preferred? I think the letter of support, I think that maybe it'd be good to look at the RFA for what is required within a letter of support. I mean, excuse me, the letter of intent. But yes, I think a letter of support at the LOI stage would be sufficient, but also you're going to have to present something in the budget that covers the CRO's willingness to work with you. So a cost estimate or something would be nice to understand that you all have had a detailed conversation about what working with the CRO will look like. And please ask another question if I didn't adequately answer that. The next question is, do relationships with CROs need to be established by the time the LOI is submitted or only by the full application? I believe by the full application, would that official relationship need to be established. And when I say established, it's a notional understanding, maybe even, again, in the last question, letter of support saying that we've talked about this, we talked about the budget, and we are willing to work with this if this funding is secured. We kind of understand that you don't want to sign a full contract because then you may be on the hook for having to execute the work or pay some type of funds to a CRO. But understand that you've had a conversation with them and they're willing to work with you on the research project that you're proposing, and you've worked out a budget would be the information I would highlight. Next question. Is the RD fund review and due diligence likely to happen for all company applicants or only those considering equity investments? Is likely to happen to those companies that the RD fund is interested in from a technology standpoint and a company standpoint. So, but let's talk about that more in the future. Can companies apply to the RD fund without having submitted an application for a grant? I don't know if the companies it would be applied, but you are more than welcome to contact the RD fund for their funding or input or what have you. Yes, the RD fund is a separate entity. You do not have to go through the Foundation Fighting Blindness grant process in order to engage with the RD fund. Next question. Company submissions in RD fund assessment. Is there any possibility for RD fund to invest alongside the translation award from the foundation? Or is this intention for this to be a sequential, if successful, funding? It can be both, actually. So let's say one scenario could be a company applies and they have a very interesting preclinical approach and asset that the RD fund and the foundation fund is interested in investing. The RD fund then has the option of offering an equity investment, which the FFB will then make a grant to the RD fund, and then they will pool their funds in order for the RD fund to make an equity investment. However, the other funding scenario is this, that the RD fund does due diligence on a company and is not interested in investing in that company. However, the foundation and their science advisory board finds their preclinical approach and asset still very interested for funding. Then the foundation can solely grant awards to that company. So we have basically, in what you're asking, both scenarios will work for funding. Next question is, are there any concerns or specific requirements for companies or principal investors based outside the United States? I'm sure there probably is that I'm missing for companies, but as far as the eligibility, we fund everywhere through, all over the globe, we fund. Therefore, for principal investigators, the only requirements that we have are outlined in the RFA, in which I highlighted earlier as far as the eligibility requirements. Essentially, having your organizations support and being able to independently conduct research and have dedicated resources and lab space in order to conduct the research. Next question. Does the foundation have guidelines about the use of AI in the grant writing process? Wow. And that is the best question of the day so far, because we don't, I think, at this particular time. However, it would be, I would offer this advice, because I think our policies and guidelines around this are evolving very quickly. I would say if you are using an AI tool in the grant writing process, just highlight it. It will not have any damaging, it won't have any damage or will not put any jeopardy to your score, but it would be nice to be able to know whether or not AI was used in the process of writing your award, especially if something happens to be off. As we all know, AI is helpful, but it is not a replacement for the human brain as of yet. So if there is something amiss in your application, it would be nice to know if AI was used in helping craft that document. And I might have a different answer for you next week since this question came up. So please stay tuned. We might have to write more within the RFA and get a new one out, but we will make sure that everyone here on this call and our listserv has an updated RFA if that we need to further address that question. Next question. What is the page limit on the grant? Well, all those requirements are listed in the RFA. So I would say go to the RFA and follow guidance there. Next question. Does the award allow for any indirect cost or direct cost only? Thanks. Right now, it is the foundation's policy only to cover direct cost of the award. Next question. I am an early career scientist. Is there high possibility of getting this grant, or else I need to make a team with senior or expert scientists also to go along with? Um, right now, that is a part of our sort of bias training, is that it does not matter the career stage you are in. What does matter is you being able to effectively show that you or your team and your institution or wherever the research is conducted has the expertise, the tools and resources to pull off the research that you are proposing. So the state of your being an early career scientist will not put you in jeopardy of not getting the award. Next question. Do you need the CRO letter of support for the LOI? I would say no, you do not need the CRO letter of support for the LOI, but if you are invited for a full application, 100% you will need that letter of support. Is budget amount and duration flexible? Is it possible to request, say, 500K for 1 year? Yes. The total funding right now, the way we have broken out is it's a $1 million award that's distributed over 3 years. However, if you have a research and development plan that is different from that, we are more than happy to entertain an alternate schedule for award. Next question. In terms of priority areas for this grant, are monogenic IRDs considered? Also, are syndromic IRDs considered? It would be yes to both. What if some of the activities have already started with the CRO? Can we still apply within the proposed budget? I would say no, we're not going to retro pay for all the work that has already been done or is ongoing. The work that you propose in your application needs to be new work. I think the next question is a follow-on from the previous one, so I think we can skip those two. For companies collaborating with university researchers where the PI is employed by the university is a master service agreement, correct? With the university sufficient. Oh, okay, excuse me. Let me read that again. For companies collaborating with university researchers where the PI is employed by the university, is a master service agreement with the university sufficient, or is there a more complex process required to demonstrate the university company relationship either at the LOI stage or by the time of full application? I believe that the master service agreement is sufficient to show the relationship of where the work is being done at. If there is a budget included in that within that master service agreement, please include that in the application as well. And again, this needs to be new work. We're not paying for work that has already been done or ongoing in the application. Also, can you explain a bit more detail the differences between a cost sharing agreement and the grant or equity agreement? Yeah, so those are three different things. The cost sharing, have been times that let's just say you are a company and you're well-funded. However, you're looking to build a relationship with the foundation fighting blindness. You may be new to the areas of IRDs or dry AMD, but you have a particular asset that you think can be important. You may say, well, for investigatory purposes, we have a $2 million plan. However, we would like to also have access to some of the resources within the foundation. Therefore, our company is going to put in $1 million. And if granted, the foundation will put in $1 million and we will start a cost sharing relationship agreement in order to move the work forward. We also have just a regular grant. Anybody can apply for a regular grant, just as I've been explaining this whole time, that again is capped at $1 million and distributed over 3 years. That's our current set policy or standard, even though that can be augmented depending on the needs of the applicant. And then equity agreement. Again, that's through the RD fund. The RD fund, which is a subsidiary of the Foundation Fighting Blindness, are the ones who can actually make equity investments into companies and assets. Next question. Can virtual companies that use CROs entirely for the research efforts be considered for funding? I would say right now, yes, but it would really need to be clearly explained in detail about how that relationship and how that process would be managed. Um, we all know that working with CROs is a necessary part of therapeutic development. However, not all CROs are built the same. Therefore, we would really want to hear a detailed plan and how the relationship will be managed when conducting that work, if solely using a CRO for your effort. If any product development was made from this proposed grant, then I want to know that the foundation will have the rights in the intellectual property rights or technology transfer, or a foundation will claim in the foundation claims no rights to any intellectual property. So that is within our award terms, that the intellectual property sits with the inventor or the institution. We want no rights to your intellectual property. However, we do encourage you to protect your asset. And the main reason is that a lot of research, especially in academia, may be using a technology that someone else has the rights to, and then may have fantastic results. But then how are they able to have the ability to move those forwards if the right sort of structures aren't in place to do so, if they don't have the rights to move forward, the rights to operate? So that's why we're encouraging, if you do have an asset that isn't protected, to please protect it. Is there a need for matching funds? And if yes, what percentage? There's no need for matching funds. It's just another way in which we will consider funding a group or a PI. So there's no need for matching funds. So there is no percentage. Where/how can we learn more about the cost share partnerships work? Please contact me. I'm happy to sort of walk you through step by step of this cost share partnership if that you feel like that is appealing for you. However, I do want to highlight that the cost share partnership, you would still need to go through the application process. It is our science advisory board's purview to decide who the foundation funds and who does not get funding. So that is outside of the wheelhouse of the operators or the staff of the foundation, and that solely sits with the recommendation from our science advisory board. Next, what is the form of the FFM investment, equity, venture, philanthropy, none? Can you please elaborate on this? I'm not sure if I can answer this question because, to be honest with you, I'm not familiar with the FFM investment. However, I believe this question probably is better well suited for the RD fund. And if you would happily please email me, I'm more than happy to get you in touch with the RD fund, and they probably would be the better people to answer. Okay, you meant Foundation Fighting Blindness. Sorry about that. What is the form investment? Again, that's the RD fund. It's not the foundation, does not make equity, venture, or investments. Our main thing is to do grants. But again, the RD fund is a subsidiary of the foundation, and they're more adequately equipped to answer any sort of equity investment type of question. All right, I will just pause for a second here. I think as far as from the Q&A, I've answered all the questions there. Maybe I'll give another minute or so to see if there's any additional questions. And thank you all. I see that we have 53 participants here online. I want you to thank you for taking the time out of your day to hear more about the Foundation's Translational Research Program. We're really excited about this retooled program and the fact of, we're making a pretty sizable funding allocation over the next 5 years for this project. So, for this program. And we really appreciate all of you that's showing up. And we really want to encourage you to put the best application in possible, because we really want to make a really big deal in the clinic. Here we go. Here's a couple more questions. How many $1 million grants are you prepared to fund? I believe in this cycle, we are prepared to fund anywhere from 5 to 7 grants this cycle. So yeah, so that would be 5 to 7 awards. Again, so I'm not seeing any more questions, and therefore we probably be able to close this meeting early. Again, please, I've left my contact information up here. I'll stop sharing for a second. If there's any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. We want the best applications problem. I want to see you challenge our science advisory board with making a decision by how great the applications are. So with that, I thank you for your time. Again, please reach out to me if you have any additional questions. I'm happy to help. Have a great rest of the day.